My son crashed my RV and blamed my aging vision to the police. For 35 years I taught people how to drive. Not the fun kind of driving. The kind where a 16-year-old grips the wheel like it's going to bite them. Or the kind where a 70-year-old comes in because the state wants to see if her reflexes still hold up. I ran the defensive driving program out of a community college annex on Coors Boulevard in Albuquerque, New Mexico, for 3 decades before I stepped back 4 years ago. My name is Leonard Bennett. I'm 68 years old. I have a New Mexico driver's license with a clean record going back to 1976, and I have had my eyes checked by the same ophthalmologist, a man named Dr. Aaron Reddy, every single year since 2009, because when your whole career is built on telling other people whether they're safe to be behind a wheel, you don't get to slack on your own vision. I say all that up front because it matters. It's the whole spine of what happened to me and my son. My wife Louise is 66. She spent 30 years as a school nurse at Highland High, patching up sprained ankles and calling parents about lice outbreaks, and now she gardens and reads and tells me I talk too much about tire pressure. We've been married 42 years. We have one son, Trevor, 38, and for most of his life I would have told you he was a good kid who just took a while to find his footing. He sells beverage accounts for a distributor out of the South Valley, driving a route that covers half the state, and up until 18 months ago, that job was the one steady thing he had going. The RV is a 2019 Newmar 30-footer, Class A, bought used 4 years ago for $68,000 out of a dealership in Rio Rancho. Louise and I paid it off in full the year I retired. It's not a fortune of a vehicle, but it represents every extra shift I picked up teaching night classes for a decade. And Trevor knew that. He'd grown up watching me save for it. Before I get into this one, do me a favor and drop where you're watching from tonight, and tell me what the weather's doing where you are right now. I like picturing where all of you are when you're listening. 6 months before any of this happened, my truck died on I-40 out past Grants. Engine just quit at 11 at night in the middle of nowhere. I called Trevor because Louise doesn't like driving that stretch after dark, and my son didn't hesitate. He got in his car, drove 90 minutes out there with a thermos of coffee he'd made himself, black, the way I take it, though he drinks his with cream. He stood with me in the cold waiting on the tow truck, kicking gravel, telling me about a work trip he had coming up to Farmington. He didn't complain once about the hour or the drive. He made a joke about how I used to fail his friends on their driving tests for not carrying jumper cables. And here I was, the instructor, stuck without a set of my own. We laughed about it, real laughing, the kind that comes easy between people who aren't performing for anybody. He hugged me before he left, which wasn't something Trevor did much anymore, and told me to call him first next time, before I called anybody else, before Louise even. I believed him. I still believe that moment was real. So when he called on a Tuesday night and asked to borrow the RV for a weekend trip to Angel Fire with his girlfriend Dana, I said yes without thinking twice. He even offered to fill the propane tanks and change the oil first, which felt like the kind of thing a responsible adult does. And I remember telling Louise afterward that our son had really turned a corner. What I didn't know, what he never told me, was that 3 months earlier he'd been pulled over on Central Avenue and charged with his second DUI. His license was suspended for 6 months. He was driving on that suspension the entire time he had my motorhome, and I had no idea, because my son had decided that was easier than telling his father the truth. I rode along for the first leg of the trip, since Louise wanted to visit her sister in Taos and it made sense to split off there. That morning I'd taken my blood pressure medication, the kind that makes me drowsy for an hour or two, and I buckled into the passenger seat while Trevor got behind the wheel. Somewhere past Eagle Nest on Highway 64, I fell asleep. What came next was the airbag punching into my chest, dust hanging in the air, and my ears ringing. We'd gone off the shoulder into a guardrail. The front end of my Newmar was crushed in on the passenger side, glass everywhere, the whole cab tilted at an angle that didn't look right. I was disoriented, my ribs hurt, and I couldn't get my bearings on what had even happened. Trevor was already out of the driver's seat by the time I came all the way to. He was on his knees next to my door asking if I was okay. And underneath that, quieter, before the trooper even got there, he said something I didn't fully register in the moment. He said, "Dad, just, if anybody asks, say you don't remember much, all right? Don't say anything specific." I didn't think anything of it right then. I was seeing spots. But a state police officer named Renshaw showed up within 20 minutes, and by the time he was taking statements, Trevor was standing next to the guardrail telling him a story I did not recognize. "My dad was driving," Trevor said. "I think there might have been a deer, Or he just didn't see the curve coming up. His eyes have been getting worse the last couple years. He never wants to admit it. He said it calm, steady, the way you'd describe a fact you'd known for years. Officer Renshaw looked at me. I was still strapped to a gurney by then, EMS checking my ribs, and I tried to say that wasn't right, that I hadn't been driving. But between the concussion protocol and the confusion of the scene, what came out of me was mostly mumbling. The report that got filed that night listed me as the driver. Under contributing factors, it said possible vision impairment, elderly operator. I want you to understand what that sentence did to me. I spent 35 years being the man other people trusted to tell them the truth about their own eyesight and reflexes. I have a folder at home with 17 years of annual eye exams in it, and now there was a New Mexico State Police report with my name on it as an impaired elderly driver who couldn't see a curve in the road. The insurance company, Sandia Mutual Auto, opened a claim and asked for my ophthalmology records as part of the investigation into what caused the crash. My agent, a woman I've known for years, called me almost apologetic, saying it was standard when an elderly driver's vision gets flagged in a police report. I sat in my kitchen that evening not saying much of anything, because something about the whole story had started to itch at me. Driving wasn't in my memory of that afternoon at all. Buckling in on the passenger side was. Trevor adjusting the mirror before we pulled out of the gas station in Eagle Nest was. Small things, but they were mine, and none of them matched what my own son had told a police officer. Here's a question for you while I keep going. Have you ever had a moment where you realized the person telling the story about you wasn't telling your story at all? Sit with that one, because it's about to get worse. Louise noticed it before I said anything out loud. 2 nights after the crash, she was in the kitchen when Trevor called Dana on speakerphone, not realizing Louise was standing right there rinsing dishes. She heard him laughing, easy and loose, saying, it's fine. Insurance companies don't dig into stuff like this for older guys. They just see elderly, vision issue and move on. It'll blow over in a week, I promise." Louise didn't say a word to him. She came and found me in the garage and told me exactly what she'd heard, word for word, the way she remembered it. That was when I stopped waiting to feel better about it and started checking. My RV had a dash cam mounted on the windshield, the same kind I'd recommended to hundreds of my students over the years. Record everything, because memory lies and cameras don't. I called my insurance agent that same afternoon and asked flat out where the Newmar had ended up. She told me it was sitting at an auto salvage lot off 2nd Street, pending the total loss decision, and that once the company signed off on totaling it, the vehicle would go straight to a liquidation auction, and anything left inside it, the SD card included, would go with it. I didn't wait on that. I called Arnie Kessler that same evening, who's serviced RVs and diesel trucks out of his own shop for 26 years and has known me since before Trevor was born. Arnie called a friend who managed the lot, and because I moved on it fast, he got me 20 minutes inside the impound fence the next morning, before the paperwork closed the file for auction. My hands were shaking pulling that card out of the dash mount. I didn't watch it there. I drove home and sat down at my kitchen table with Louise beside me and played it on my laptop. It showed everything. Trevor behind the wheel, phone propped against the dash, texting Dana about dinner reservations in Angel Fire. A man who'd logged 100,000 miles a year on his sales route, who knew better than almost anybody what a phone in your hand at 65 miles an hour costs you, doing exactly that. A deer crossing 30 yards ahead, Trevor jerking the wheel hard, overcorrecting, the RV sliding off the shoulder into the guardrail. And then, right after the airbag deployed, before the dust had even settled, his voice on the recording, clear as anything. Dad, if anybody asks, say you were driving. Just say you don't remember. I can't have another one on my record right now, okay? I can't." I sat there with Louise's hand on my arm, and I didn't say anything for a long while. I called Trevor and asked him to come by that Sunday. I told him it was about the insurance paperwork, nothing more. He showed up relaxed, in a good mood, sat down at our kitchen table like nothing was wrong. "Insurance finally settle up?" he asked. "Not yet," I said. "I got the dashcam footage back before the RV went to auction." He went very still. "What footage?" "You know what footage, Trevor." He tried a laugh that didn't land. "Dad, come on." I told the officer what I remembered. It happened fast. Nobody's lying. "You told him I was driving," I said. "You told a police officer I have vision problems. I have 17 years of eye exams in a folder in that cabinet behind you. Not one flag. Not once. And I have a recording of you telling me to say I don't remember, right after you're the one who overcorrected into a guardrail texting Dana about dinner." "You don't understand what's on the line for me," he said, and his voice cracked a little. I got a second DUI in June. My license has been suspended since July. If it comes out I was driving that RV on a suspended license, I lose my job. I probably do time. I panicked. I made a call in about 4 seconds, and I picked the option where you'd be fine, and I wouldn't lose everything. He rubbed his hands over his face. I was going to tell you eventually about the DUI. There was never a good time, and then there really wasn't a good time. There's never a good time for the truth, Trevor. That's not a reason to skip it. I wasn't fine, I said. I had a police report calling me an impaired elderly driver. I had an insurance company asking for my medical records like I'd done something wrong. You didn't protect me, Trevor. You used me. Nothing even happened to you, he said. It's paperwork. You're not the one who's going to prison over this. It's my name, I said. It's the one thing I built for 35 years, that when I said somebody was safe to drive or not safe to drive, people believed me because I never lied about it. You took that and you handed it to a police officer like it was nothing. He didn't have an answer for that one. He just sat there with his jaw working. And after a while he asked, quiet, so what happens now? Now I go back to Officer Renshaw with the footage, I told him. What happens after that is up to you and a lawyer. I did exactly that. I brought the SD card to the State Police District Office and gave a full statement, and Renshaw amended the report within the week. The insurance company closed its investigation into my vision entirely and reopened Trevor's claim as a fraud referral, since a false statement to police tied to a total loss payout north of $6,000 isn't something they can just let go. The district attorney's office charged Trevor with insurance fraud as a fourth-degree felony, given the claim amount involved, plus a misdemeanor count for making a false statement to a peace officer, and a separate misdemeanor for driving on a suspended license at the time of the crash. His lawyer worked out a plea on the felony that knocked it down to a lesser fraud charge with 18 months of probation and full restitution to Sandia Mutual Auto, on top of 100 hours of community service and a fresh license suspension that runs another 18 months past his original one. His employer let him go anyway, since the sales route requires a valid license, felony plea or not.